Imagine your mind, that private sanctuary of your thoughts, suddenly becoming a labyrinth of shadows. You wake up one morning, and your right arm no longer belongs to you, hanging inert at your side like a foreign object. You try to scream in terror, but your voice has vanished, trapped in a bottomless well inside your throat. You look at your dying father, whom you love more than anything in the world, and suddenly his features blur because your eyes have decided to switch off. This is not a scene from a horror movie. This was the daily reality of Bertha Pappenheim, a young woman from Vienna's Jewish high society in 1880, whom medical history labeled as Anna O, and whom we could consider, without fear of exaggeration, the forgotten mother of psychoanalysis. The story begins within a strict and repressive family where a woman's role was clearly defined. Bertha, a young woman of brilliant intelligence and an overflowing imagination, found herself chained to a future of salons and marriage. Her only escape valve was caring for her adored father during his long and painful illness. It was in this breeding ground of repressed emotions, love, grief, rage, disgust, and profound helplessness, that the first terrifying symptoms sprouted. They were not mild pains, but a cascade of phenomena that seemed taken from a neurology textbook, yet with no apparent physical cause. Paralysis that migrated through her body temporary, hysterical blindness, aphonia that left her mute for days, and a nervous cough that echoed like a lament. But the most fascinating and chilling thing was the ritual that unfolded every evening. Like a nightmare clock, Anna would enter an altered state of consciousness that she herself called her time of shadows. In this trance, her personality split. From the educated and restrained young woman emerged a furious, terrified, and lucid woman who spoke of black snakes slithering from the walls to coil around her father, or who screamed that her own fingers were turning into glass skeletons. It was as if her unconscious, saturated with suffering, had found a dramatic and symbolic way to express what her conscious mind could not allow itself to say. The parade of doctors was useless. Diagnoses of female hysteria, treatments with opiates and cold water baths. Nothing worked. Until he appeared, Josef Breuer, a brilliant and compassionate physician, but deeply trained in the organic medicine of his time. Perplexed, Breuer decided to do the unthinkable, abandon the syrups and listen. And not just listen, but encourage her to speak in that same trance state. It was Anna herself, with genius insight, baptized this method the talking cure, or, with an even more powerful metaphor, chimney sweeping. Each session was an archaeological excavation of her own psyche. And then the miracle happened. Breuer began to notice an astonishing pattern. When Anna, in her trance, managed to connect a physical symptom with the specific traumatic memory that had generated it, and upon verbalizing it, she managed to express the emotion repressed in that instant, the symptom disappeared forever. Behold the genesis of catharsis. Her hydrophobia, inability to drink, traced back to the moment when, exhausted from watching over her father, she saw with disgust her lady's dog drinking water from a glass. She, out of politeness, could not express her disgust. That repressed disgust became a symptom. The paralysis of her right arm was linked to a dream in which her father appeared to her with the face of a skull, and when she tried to push him away, her arm had fallen asleep on the back of the chair, symbolically paralyzed in a thwarted defensive gesture. Her aphonia was related to a night when, wishing to be alone, she forced herself to stay awake by her father's side, containing the urge to ask him to leave. However, the cure was not linear nor an instant happy ending. The relationship with Breuer became intense and dangerous. Anna developed what Freud would later call transference, a powerful emotional and erotic dependence on her doctor. The situation exploded in the most dramatic and celebrated episode of the case. Anna O, in a state of delirium, began screaming in anguish that she was pregnant with Breuer's child, that she was expecting his imaginary child, a terrified and morally horrified. Breuer sedated her and fled the case with his wife on an urgent vacation to Venice, abandoning his patient at her most critical moment. This personal therapeutic failure, however, would become the cornerstone of a universal theory. Because Breuer told everything to his young and ambitious colleague, Sigmund Freud. Freud, with a radically different perspective, did not see a failure, but confirmation of his most audacious ideas. Where Breuer saw ethical problems, Freud saw transference and repressed infantile sexuality. He reinterpreted the case, arguing that Anna's true trauma was not her father's death, but her own unconscious incestuous desires for him, which she then transferred to Breuer. Freud took the talking cure and structured it into a monumental theoretical edifice, psychoanalysis. And here arises the question that still burns today: who is the true author? The architect who drew the blueprints, Freud, or the person who, with her painful body and symbolic mind, provided the foundations and materials, Anna O? Without her symptoms and her sharp ability to name the process, the initial spark might never have existed. The story, however, does not end here. The Freudian legend tells us that Anna was cured. The reality was much more complex and human. After Breuer's flight, her condition deteriorated severely. She was admitted to the Bellevue Sanatorium in Switzerland, where she battled a severe morphine addiction. But it is here that Bertha Pappenheim, the woman, rose from the ashes of Anna O, the clinical case. In a feat of titanic will, she detoxified and completely reinvented herself. She left behind the passivity of the patient to become an unstoppable social force. Bertha Pappenheim transformed into a pioneer of social work and a fierce feminist. She founded the League of Jewish Women in Germany, erected an orphanage, and traveled throughout Eastern Europe, fighting against white slavery and the exploitation of women and girls. She wrote, gave lectures, and became a respected moral leader. Most ironic of all, she came to openly despise psychoanalysis, considering it an obscenity that reduced all human complexity to sexuality. The patient became the healer of her community, and Germany even issued a postage stamp in her honor. Is this not the most powerful therapeutic outcome imaginable? To add more layers to the mystery, modern medicine has revisited the case. Neuroscientists and historians have proposed an explosive hypothesis. What if Anna O did not suffer from hysteria, but from an organic neurological disease undiagnosed in the 19th century? Her symptoms, the paralyses, visual alterations, trance-like episodes, are strikingly consistent with conditions like limbic encephalitis, temporal lobe epilepsy, or even tuberculous meningitis. This possibility opens an abyss of questions. Did Freud build his empire on a misdiagnosis? Was the talking cure a coincidence, a large-scale placebo effect, or the genuine treatment for real psychological suffering expressed through a sick body? The case of Anna O is, therefore, much more than a historical anecdote. It is a mirror reflecting our own struggles. It reminds us of the therapeutic power of being heard, of giving words to our pain. But it also warns us about the dangers of medicalizing female suffering and of building mythologies around geniuses, forgetting the invisible collaborators. Her dual legacy endures. She is the founding stone of one of the world's most influential therapies, and, at the same time, an eternal testimony to the human capacity for resilience and reinvention. If this journey to the confines of the mind and history has moved and disturbed you, we want to hear from you. Conversation is the essence of the cure. Do you believe Bertha Pappenheim was the inadvertent co-creator of psychoanalysis? Or is her true legacy in her social activism? Do you believe her illness was psychological, neurological, or a complex mixture of both? Give it a like if this kind of deep dive passionates you. Comment with your theories and reflections. Subscribe so you don't miss our next encounter with the mysteries of the psyche, and tell us, what other psychological enigma would you like us to dissect with this same level of detail?